Okay, well, astrology of March, long awaited video. I just don't even really want to get into it, but I know that I have to. Like, it's my civic duty, I don't know, to report this astrological weather that we're about to step into. I made a graph of sorts of the astrology of March and it had the people in a frenzy. So, in this video, I am, of course, going to dissect all of that to make it digestible for you. But my intention as well is to really frame it in a way where you can leave this video having a better understanding of how different transits bleed and feed into each other, and more importantly, what you can do to work with that energy. There's a lot more free will to astrology than people think, and I'm here to tell you that a lot of March revolves around you using your gut and your instincts to correctly align yourself on a path that just feels a lot more authentic to you. I'm sick as a dog right now. Of course, you can't tell because I look amazing, but nevertheless, I will persevere to deliver this incredibly important monthly update to all of you. Before I get into the video, if you're new here, welcome, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you're not new, thanks for coming back, because each video has progressively been getting more chaotic. I'm slowly peeling back the layers of my truest self. You know, as a Scorpio, it takes me a while to get comfortable with you, but I'm glad that all of you are here. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment, and turn on your notifications to make sure that you never miss a video from me. I'm such a YouTuber now. God, let's get into it. So March 2nd, universal time, Venus retrogrades at 10 degrees Aries, and this will be affecting Aries placements, of course, as well as Venus-ruled people, so Taurus placements and Libra placements, and then all of the cardinal signs as well, Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, Aries. So Venus retrograde is a big deal this year because the last time this planet was retrograde was during the summer of 2023 when it retrograded through Leo, which is another fire sign. And fire is important, right? As I mentioned in my 2025 astrology forecast, this is the year of fire and of masculinity and just this sort of abrasive quality to how the stars are interacting with us. And so what is fire, right? It's drama, it's passion, it's heat, it can't be contained. And so when you have all of that moving through the love planet, the attachment planet, you get a lot of intensity. And I don't want to hear anything about fear mongering in these comments because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just telling you how it is. Some months are going to be more intense than other months. Now, Venus in Aries is particularly annoying because Venus is in detriment in Aries. And what it means for a sign to be in detriment in a planet is that the usual qualities of said planet, so Venus, love, beauty, money, social justice, relationships, connection, all of those themes right there essentially have a really hard time naturally expressing itself. It struggles there, not just during a retrograde phase, but before it as well. By the way, there is a 100% free digital download on my website listing all of the signs and their basic astrology. So it's ruler, exaltation, fall, detriment, planetary joy, body parts, some keywords for all of the 12 zodiac signs. There are a lot of rules to astrology, and I personally feel like the basics should always be free. So if you want a nice starting point for understanding those terms, you can definitely find that under the digital resources tab on my website. Once again, 100% for free. The planetary ruler of Aries is Mars, which represents competition, combat, aggression, conflict, desire, ego, and this overall me first kind of energy. Whereas Venus is very we first. Venus is union, it's peaceful. So once again, Venus is irritated in Aries. It's uncomfortable and itchy, and that's not even including being retrograde. But there's nothing we can do to change that, right? So you have to learn how to use it to your advantage. One of the best ways to work with Venus retrograde in Aries is to embrace the themes of independence in relationships. Aries is a sign that thrives on autonomy. And like I said earlier, it's very me first. And when Venus is retrograde here, it forces us to reassess how we navigate love and money and social connections from a more self-driven perspective. And the fact that she's retracing her steps here means we're being pulled back to something we fought for before, whether that's a relationship, a friendship, a financial decision, or even a version of ourselves that was once extremely independent, but got lost in the compromises of connection. Venus retrograde periods always have a storyline, literally always. They always cycle back to unfinished Venetian business from its previous retrograde 8 years prior. So you should be looking back to March to April 2017 for signs of this transit. What was happening in your relationships back then? What about your finances or your self-worth? Venus in Aries doesn't play by the rules of longevity. It plays by the rules of immediacy. So if you find yourself re-entering a dynamic that really was bright and really fast a lot of years ago, ask yourself, is this a revival of that or more of you learning the final lesson of whatever you were going through back then? And don't forget that Aries is a cardinal sign. It starts things, but it doesn't always finish them. And Venus here is in a position of forced action, but she's also like looking over her shoulder a lot. So this means a lot of conflict-based attraction, being attracted to and desiring what challenges us, but also a lot of mistaking resistance for passion. It means power struggles in relationships, who has control, who leads, who follows, and also a lot of desire versus delay. Venus wants pleasure, but Aries wants conquest. So what happens when the chase is kind of just like interrupted? This retrograde is truly going to strip relationships of their illusions, because Venus retrograde in Aries doesn't allow you to pretend you're okay with something that fundamentally makes you feel caged or unseen or underappreciated. So if you're in a relationship that's running on obligation instead of desire, I would expect that tension to really come up. If you're chasing something unattainable because of your ego rather than genuine connection with that person, the chase will eventually exhaust you. If you've been too independent, if you've been isolating yourself under the guise of being self-sufficient, you'll start to feel some cracks there. And let's be honest, Venus retrograde in Aries is one of the most pride-checking transits that we get. This is Venus walking backward through the sign of warriors and lone wolves. It's realizing that love, money, and self-worth can't just be all about you. And then all of that sets you up for later on in the month when Venus retrograde does not stop, but instead switches into Pisces on March 27th, universal time. Now, unlike Aries, Pisces does very well in Venus. In fact, Venus in Pisces is an exalted position and the energy completely shifts. But before you assume that means suddenly things get better, let me break down, because Venus might be exalted in Pisces, but this is still a retrograde, right? Which means that all of Pisces' most intoxicating and slippery qualities are going to get heightened. Aries and Pisces could not be more different. Aries is self-driven, it's direct, it's reactive. Pisces is sensitive, it operates on an entirely different frequency, one of surrender instead of conquest. And when Venus dips back into Pisces during a retrograde, something extremely specific happens. The heat and the urgency of Aries dissolves into nostalgia and into emotional overwhelmment. The need for independence gets replaced by an almost desperate need for connection. And instead of addressing issues head on, we start romanticizing the past. And this is where that Venus retrograde trap starts to form, because Aries is quite simple, really. And when it is retrograde, it forces us to deal with the raw truth of our desires. But Pisces tempts us into this old history. This is when exes suddenly seem to be way better than they actually were. When you start asking yourself, what if I did this, instead of what is actually true and in front of you. Venus retrograde in Pisces is a siren song. It's a call back to something that might never have been real to begin with. And I think that's the danger, confusing fantasy with reality or mistaking longing for love. I think Venus retrograde in Pisces is 100% more deceiving than when in Aries. But let's get deeper, because we can go deeper here. Venus retrograde in Pisces is not just about love, it's about loss, it's about redemption and the disillusion of old attachments, because Pisces, as the final sign of the zodiac, is all about endings. And when Venus is retracing her steps here, she's asking, what have you been holding on to that no longer serves you? Where have you deceived yourself in love, in money, in self-worth? What parts of your identity, of yourself, dissolve when you stop defining yourself through your relationships? And this retrograde will hit hardest for people who've built their sense of self or who they are on external validation. If Aries tested your ability to be alone, Pisces will test your ability to let go of people, of fantasies, of expectations and beliefs about what love should be. One key player in this transit is Saturn in Pisces, which Venus will eventually conjoin in early April. And that's going to be a major reality check. Venus wants to indulge, to dream, to merge, but Saturn always reminds us that real love and real financial security needs structure and accountability. So if this retrograde has you chasing illusions and fantasies, that Saturn contact that's going to happen is really going to feel like a cold shower. Expect moments of emotional reckoning. Something you maybe thought was forever might be revealed as very temporary. Expect spiritual exhaustion. If you've been pouring energy into a one-sided situation, you'll feel it extremely deeply. You'll learn more about karmic lessons in love and money, because Venus retrograde in Pisces isn't casual. It's asking you to clear emotional debts that you have, right? And listen up, because this is the part where people get lost. Venus retrograde in Pisces can make you feel like you're surrendering to the past, when in reality, it's more just a test of discernment. Okay. Your ex coming back after a year doesn't mean that you're meant to be together. It's really just a test. So here are some ways to work with this energy instead of drowning in it. Okay. Number one, stay grounded. Fantasy is very seductive, right? But what's real? Keep checking in with yourself. Number two, look for patterns. Venus retrograde cycles repeat every 8 years. What was happening March to April of 2017? What themes are resurfacing for you? And number three, if you're in a relationship or financial situation that has been built on delusion, this is the time to cut cords, okay? Not to reinforce them. A key day to watch is April 7th, 2025, when Venus conjoins Saturn in Pisces. This is when that fog starts to lift a bit and you will start to see things for what they actually are. So be on the lookout for that. Venus retrograde in Aries will test your ability to be independent. Venus retrograde in Pisces will test your ability to release attachments that no longer are aligned with you. And let me be clear, this retrograde cycle is not just about love or money, right? It's about identity and power and how you balance the tension between self-sufficiency and surrender. And by the time Venus stations direct on April 13th, 2025, Universal Time, you'll have a clearer, if not slightly harsher understanding of what you truly desire. And that's the point, right? Because once Venus moves forward, the lessons won't just be a theory, right? They'll actually be lived through. Venus is only one piece of the puzzle for the month of March because Venus is not the only planet retrograding through Aries and Pisces. Mercury will also be retrograding through the two signs the entire month as well. And as you know, if you've watched last month's forecast, Mercury is currently in Pisces, but on March 3rd, it then enters Aries. Mercury in Aries has no filter. It speaks with its mind without little thought, which can make it extremely empowering and confident and intriguing, right? But also equally tactless and dangerous and hurtful sometimes. Mercury is associated with travel and being this messenger, right? Hermes is the god of messages, and there is this route between the brain and speech, or this route between thought and communication, right? Let's use Mercury in Libra versus Mercury in Aries as an example. Mercury in Libra is going to stop at Jenny's house to ask if that's the right thing to say to so-and-so, and then it's going to stop at Joan's house, and then it's going to sit on a bench in the park and write out the pros and cons of what it's thinking to say. There's this true navigation and long thought process behind Mercury and Libra, whereas Mercury and Aries truly is, this is what I'm thinking, and now I'm going to say it, which is beyond unhelpful when it stations retrograde on March 15th. There's an honesty to Mercury in Aries that can 100% be refreshing. It's raw, it's direct, it cuts through all of the fluff, but that same honesty, when it's unchecked, can also come off as extremely aggressive. Mercury in Aries wants to be first, the first to know, to decide first, to speak first. But when Mercury goes retrograde here, that instinct gets frustrated. We're forced to revisit what we've said, to reconsider the choices that we thought were final, to re-examine what we thought that we knew, right? This is jumping to conclusions only to realize that you've missed the point in the bigger picture entirely. It's speaking impulsively, then having to retract or clarify or repair. It's acting on instinct only to realize that you should have waited. It's mental exhaustion from trying to win arguments or trying to prove a point. It's learning the hard way that not every thought needs to be spoken immediately. I'm sure people who have their Mercury in Aries natally understand that. This is the moment when impulsive decisions pretty much just hit a wall, when communication breaks down due to arrogance, when technology fails because we didn't double check the details. Mercury in Aries is a fighter, but Mercury retrograde in Aries is realizing that you've swung too soon and now you have to defend a stance that you're not even sure you believe in anymore, right? When Mercury is in Aries, it thinks something now, so then it says something now. There's no filter, there's no second opinions, no revision. And that's fine when Mercury's direct because it gives confidence, conviction, and quick thinking, right? But when Mercury goes retrograde, that's when the regret kicks in. And I know all the Aries placements are like, we don't regret anything, but I promise you, this Mercury retrograde is a textbook case of I should not have sent that text, or I should have waited before saying that, or I wish I had thought this through, essentially. By the end of the month, Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces, where communication turns into a feeling rather than a fact, it loses the plot entirely. Truly, Mercury retrograde in Pisces is ambiguous. In Pisces, it forgets to say what it wants to say, it never clarifies anything, and it makes us very unsure as people. This is where the retrograde really starts to blur things, where words get misunderstood, where information is misremembered, conversations just turn into riddles. We go from arguing, essentially, in this retrograde to questioning, to then losing track of what we were even talking about in the first place. That is the Mercury retrograde in Aries to Mercury retrograde in Pisces pipeline. March 14th at 6:59 a.m. Universal Time, a total lunar eclipse in Virgo will take place. We're stepping into eclipse season now, and this is going to be an emotional and physical and mental and spiritual purification of what's not working in your life, essentially. It's also going to be the first Virgo eclipse in the cycle near the South Node, meaning your unhealthy comfort zones, yes, you, are going to resurface. I can't stress enough how critical it is that the South Node is in Virgo, because what it means is that this eclipse is here to release, to purge, and dismantle anything that's not serving you. And remember, since this eclipse is ruled by Mercury, Mercury rules over Gemini and Virgo, Mercury will already be in its pre-retrograde shadow in Aries before stationing retrograde the next day. So expect confusion, miscalculations, potential frustrations over imperfect or rushed decisions. The timing of this eclipse, just one day before Mercury stations retrograde, means that whatever happens now will require major reworking in the weeks and honestly months ahead. The word that comes to me is detox. The South Node is about karmic release, meaning this eclipse forces us to detox our lives, whether that's through clearing out old habits, breaking cycles of burnout, or finally walking away from perfectionist tendencies that leave no room for growth in our lives, right? And since Virgo is ruled by Mercury, this eclipse brings up questions of communication and learning and mental processing. But with Mercury about to station retrograde in Aries, clarity is going to be confusing. That's a given. Virgo wants precise answers, but this eclipse will really disrupt your usual sources of logic. It will force you to trust a deeper wisdom, which is where that pull from the Pisces axis starts to come in. And this is an eclipse, so I'm going to give you some tips, obviously, and advice on how to work with this energy. My main one is physical and mental detox, right? Because the South Node pulls up accumulated stress and burnout to the surface. It's a good time to purge toxic habits, to clean up your space, to declutter your mental load. Your nervous system might be on overdrive, so prioritize rest and grounding yourself. Number two is that this eclipse might trigger this need to fix everything. It's Virgo, right? And you might have to ask yourself, is this actually important, or am I hyper focusing and fixating on small problems to avoid bigger necessary changes? Number three is that Virgo rules the body and digestion and daily habits. You should reassess how you care for yourself, from diet and exercise to also mental wellness, right? But avoid extremes, right? The goal is balance, not restriction. This Virgo lunar eclipse is only the beginning of a way larger Virgo Pisces axis that will unfold over the next 2-ish years. And the themes revealed now will continue to evolve, especially in September 2025, bringing the other half of the story, right? But for now, the message is pretty clear. Purge, cleanse, clear out what no longer works for you, right? Let go of overthinking, overmanaging, overprotecting, and perfecting, because soon you'll definitely need to embrace the unknown. And that's where that Pisces pull comes in once again. As eclipse season continues, we move from the Virgo lunar eclipse into a solar eclipse in Aries on March 29th, Universal Time. This is it, the last eclipse in the Aries Libra cycle that's been unfolding since April 2023, a cycle that has asked us to confront self versus other, independence versus partnership, assertion versus compromise. It's now reaching its final climactic moment. I'm kind of scared. I don't really know how to feel about it. Solar eclipses mark fated new beginnings, and Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the great initiator, the warrior, the trailblazer, right? But because this is the final Aries eclipse in the cycle, it's not just about a fresh start. It's about a decisive step forward, one you might not have really been ready for until now. This is the last push in the cycle into choosing yourself without hesitation, taking action without waiting for external validation, courageously embracing a new identity or path or challenge, releasing relationship dynamics that have held you back. Remember, this Aries solar eclipse closes a nearly 2-year cycle of eclipses across that Aries Libra axis. Looking back, April 19th, 2023, solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, October 14th, 2023, solar eclipse at 21 degrees of Libra, March 24th, 2024, lunar eclipse at 5 degrees of Libra, April 8th, 2024, solar eclipse, 19 degrees of Aries, October 2nd, 2024, solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Libra. And then now, the final step, right? A moment of personal rebirth. So whatever began in April 2023 is now complete. There's no more going back. There's no more questioning. If you've been waiting for a sign to fully claim your power and identity and direction, especially in that Aries ruled house of yours, this is going to be it, right? But remember, Mercury is still retrograding and it will re-enter Pisces on March 30th, the day after this eclipse, right? Which complicates things just a bit. Mercury retrograde brings confusion about next steps. Something has definitely shifted, but the full picture isn't clear yet. It's unfinished conversations, it's delayed information, it's second thoughts. There will be this need, I think, to trust intuition over logic, especially once Mercury moves into Pisces. And this isn't a reason to stall at all, but it does mean that what begins now will unfold more in stages. You might not have all of the answers yet, but Aries moves forward regardless, right? So trust that clarity will come to you as long as you keep stepping toward what feels right for you. In the heart of all this, the sun enters Aries on March 20th, marking the spring equinox, the true astrological new year, and a powerful moment of resurrection and courage and new beginnings. It's Aries season, okay? This 0 degrees Aries moment is always a rebirth, right? But in 2025, it comes with a lot of weight. Aries is ruled by Mars, the god of war, and its mythology is deeply tied to the hero's journey, to battles fought for personal sovereignty, to the will to carve your own path through the world, right? But Aries is also connected to the golden ram in Greek mythology. It's this sacred creature of rescue and divine intervention. It's the symbol of the golden fleece, right? Destiny, pursuit, the trials of a hero's path. The Aries archetype is all about courage, but not all courage, I think, looks the same. Sometimes it's found in leaping into the unknown, and sometimes in pausing before charging ahead. And with Mercury still retrograde, I think this Aries season in 2025 is not going to be this clean, uninhibited rebirth. It's more of a rebirth that involves looking within the past and rethinking your path ahead. And there's going to be a lot of unfinished business, especially with the eclipses that have to unfold. Honestly, all of March revolves around the past and the future colliding. Aries is the first spark. It's the fire in the darkness, the leap of faith. And the equinox is a threshold. It's a moment of initiation, and we're stepping into a season of bold action and raw self-discovery. But this time it's happening in the midst of deep reevaluation, Venus retrograde, re-examination, Mercury retrograde, karmic closure, the final Aries eclipse, right? Old cycles are dissolving, but the new path isn't fully formed yet. The last thing I want to talk about briefly is Neptune's ingress into Aries at the end of the month. Neptune will be in Aries from March 30th, 2025 to October 22nd, 2025. Then it will station retrograde in Pisces and move back into Aries in 2026 and stay there until 2039. So what we're getting here this year is a teaser of what Neptune in Aries will eventually bring. Neptune will be leaving Pisces, and Neptune is at home in Pisces, ruling dreams and mysticism, illusions, and the great cosmic ocean of collective consciousness. Since the early 2010s, this transit has expanded spirituality, but also unleashed ways of deception and misinformation and escapism into society. I mean, think about the rise of mainstream spiritual movements like manifestation, astrology, mysticism going viral, the rise of AI generated content, digital illusions, right? Social media as this altered reality. Escapism has been arguably at its peak, right? Substance use, addiction, this disconnection from reality, the erosion of objective truth. So post-truth era, conspiracy culture, mass disinformation. I mean, literally all of this, right? Pisces dissolves boundaries, but Aries ignites them. So this transition from Pisces to Aries is going to feel like waking up from a dream, right? And I think the world will really, really, really feel it. Neptune and Aries will get its own video, but for now, what I'll say is that Aries is the sign of action and war and individualism and courage. So Neptune here spiritualizes the battlefield. It spiritualizes these themes, meaning conflicts will no longer just be about land or power, but about ideals and beliefs and ideological wars. Neptune and Aries will birth a new wave of dreamers and revolutionaries, much like its last transit in the 1860s, American Civil War, abolition of slavery, unification unification movements in Europe. I mean, truly, I don't think you guys are really ready for the radical shift in activism and identity and purpose-driven battles that are on its way to us. Aries rules warriors and heroes and pioneers, and Neptune rules martyrs, visionaries, and deception. We'll see more figures who blend spirituality with leadership, for better or for worse. Some will be true trailblazers of this new era, while others are going to fall into like cults, right? Cult movements. There's going to be this clash between faith and force. And what I mean by that is the soft, watery spirituality of Neptune and Pisces will be replaced by a bold, militant, fire-infused spiritual movement. I don't think I really am a fan of it, but I'll dissect it more in another video. Okay, I've been filming for like 3 hours. The sun is starting to set over here in New York. But here's what I'll say. March 2025 is not just another month. It's a threshold. Clearly, there is so much activation happening. And this doesn't happen every month, right? This is a month of reckonings and revelations where the fire of Aries burns away illusions and the waters of Pisces cleanse what's left behind. It's a collision of endings and beginnings, forcing us to strip away the false, to confront what's raw and real, and redefine our sense of self and love and communication and purpose. And the question isn't whether you'll change, it's about how you'll wield that change to your advantage later on. If you liked this video, which I hope you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to know more about how these energies affect you personally, you can always book a reading with me. My links are all in the description below.